Hello students, in last class we discussed about the new economic reforms under that P.V. Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh introduced the new economic reforms at 1991, that is NEP, new economic reforms. Through that they introduced liberalization, privatization, globalization, right? LPG. Liberalization, privatization, globalization. Okay, now we should discuss one by one what is the meaning and what are the changes in liberalization, privatization, globalization. Okay, first we should discuss about the meaning and changes of the liberalization. Okay. So, what is the meaning of liberalization? Liberalization was introduced to put an end to restriction. Simple. Put an end to restrictions. Simple. Liberalize. Liberalize means open up of Indian economy. That is liberalize the remove or reduce the restrictions. Remove or reduce the restrictions or removal of restrictions on private sector. Removal of the restrictions. Removal of the restrictions on private sector. That is called only liberalization. That is giving greater freedom to the economic agents. Okay, giving greater freedom to the economic agents to produce goods and services. Before it was completely under the government sector. That means decided by the government, that is what to produce, how to produce and for whom to produce, and also what prices should be fixed. Everything under the government. Decision taken by government only. But through the LPG, the government has decided to remove all the restrictions on private sector. That was they can fix their prices for their products and they can produce goods and services any much amount and any type of goods they can produce. Before it was completely decision under the government only, but through the increasing of LPG, especially liberalization. So liberalization means put an end to restrictions. Put an end to restrictions. That is rules and regulations should be removal on private sector. That is giving greater freedom to economic agents. Economic agents means they are producers. Economic agents are even producers also, consumers. The producers are freedom now. They got freedom. They are free now to fix the price what they produce. They can produce any goods and services. Before it was completely under the government. What government suggesting that type of goods and services should be produced by the private sector before introduction of new economic reforms. But through the liberalization under 1991 economic reforms or new economic policy, these are all restrictions removed by the government on private sector. Simple. Liberalization means giving greater freedom to economic agents to produce goods and services. Giving greater freedom to economic agents. Okay. Giving greater freedom to economic agents. Before there was no freedom to produce goods and services to the private sector. Everything decided by the government. But through the liberalization, there was put an end to restrictions. There was put an end to restrictions. That is end to restrictions. That means removing the restrictions. Removing the restrictions and rules and regulations on private sector. So through this, they have decided to produce goods and services any amount or any type of goods and services, and they can fix any price on production of goods and services. Before it was completely restricted by the government. And all the decisions taken by the government. But through the liberalization, there was put an end to restrictions. Put an end to restrictions. That means giving greater freedom to economic agents. Giving greater freedom to economic agents. That means they can do any economic activities. That means there was no restriction on economic activities of the private sector. There was no restrictions on economic activities of the private sector of the economy. So anyhow, liberalization is the process of government's controls and restriction on economic activities. So liberalization means removal of restrictions. Removal of restrictions on the private sector. Removal of restrictions on the private sector. That means giving greater freedom to economic agents to produce goods and services. It means they can produce any goods and services. They can decide. They can only decide how much to produce, what to produce, for whom to produce, then how much to fix the price. Everything decided by the private sector present in the situation through the liberalization. Through the liberalization. Okay, it reduces the government's role. Reduces the government role, and also it has given to the importance to market forces. It has given importance to market forces to fix the prices. Market forces means that is supply and demand. Supply and demand. On the basis of supply and demand only, the price will be fixed in the market. Before it was the price is fixed by the government. The price is fixed by the government. Now reducing or removing the role of the government, and they are allowing to market forces. They are allowing to market forces to fix the price of goods and services. Before the price fixed by the government, through the liberalization, they are reducing the role of government, and they are allowing to make market prices. That is to fix the price. They are allowing the market forces. Market forces depends upon the supply and demand. Depends upon the supply and demand only, price will be fixed. Okay. So in liberalization, they also removed the export and import restrictions. Before it was the country, a country should be export this much of goods only. A country should be import this much of goods like within this time. Before it was like that. But now they have removed all the restrictions on export and import, and also technological upgradation. They can free now. They are free now to receiving a new technology from other countries, and also what they identified in our country, that is also they can send to other countries. Okay, and also they can invest in other countries, and other countries also invest in our country. So that was completing everything removed by the government through the liberalization. That is only liberalization. Okay, giving freedom. They can fix the prices, they can decide what to produce, how to produce, how much to produce, like how much they can export, how much they can import, everything decided themselves only, okay, without getting permission from the government. That is called only liberalization. Especially under the liberalization, so many changes happened. So many measures brought. So what are the measures? So what are the changes? Everything we will discuss one by one. I hope you clear that meaning of liberalization means removing the restrictions. Remove the restrictions on private sector to in the production activities. That is fix the price, how to produce, how much to produce, what to produce, where to produce, when to produce, how much to distribute, okay, how much price should fix. Everything decided by the government through the liberalization. We are removing all the restrictions on export, import, technological upgradation, foreign investment, everything, all the restrictions are removed by the government through the liberalization. Liberalization is nothing but giving greater freedom to economic agents to fix to price, to decide what to produce, whom to produce, everything. That is leaving to themselves only. They can decide what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce. They means here private sector. Before it was under the government. Now they are removing all the restrictions. So next we have to discuss what are the measures taken by the liberalization. Through the liberalization, what are the measures introduced by the government through the liberalization? Liberalization means put an end of restrictions. Put an end of restrictions. Okay. So important measures of the liberalizations. important measures taken through the liberalization. So what are they? That is, first one is deregulation of industrial sector. Deregulation of industrial sector. Second one is financial sector. Reforms. Third one is tax reforms. Third one is tax reforms. Fourth one is foreign exchange reforms. Foreign exchange reforms. And fifth one is reforms in trade and investment. Reforms in trade and investment. Okay, these are measures taken by the government through the liberalization. Through the liberalization only, the government has given the importance and freedom to these activities. So under this we have to discuss one by one. First one is deregulation of industrial sector. Deregulation, in name only it is there. Before it was completely regulated by the government. Now deregulation of industrial sector in the country. That means giving freedom to industrial sector to fix prices, to produce type of goods and services. Before it was under the regulation of government or regulated by the government. Now deregulation. Second one, financial sector reforms. Financial sector reforms, the financial sector reform, the financial sector activities completely controlled by the Reserve Bank of India. The financial activities in the country controlled by the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India only decides how much rate of interest should be fixed, how much cash should be keep with themselves. Okay, everything decided by the Reserve Bank of India under the finance sector. That is also we will discuss. And tax reforms like direct tax, indirect tax, how much should be fixed the tax rate. Okay, whether should be increase or decrease, everything we will discuss under this. And also foreign exchange reforms, even reforms in trade and investment. Okay, everything we have to discuss one by one. These are all measures. These are all measures taken under the liberalization by the government. Under the liberalization by the government. Very important for 4 marks and also 6 marks. So one by one we have to discuss. First one is deregulation of industrial sector.